Okay, let's give it a minute. See who joins here. I'll move this bit closer actually, so I can see what people have to say. Okay, we're going to give it a couple of minutes and just see who joins the live here. I'm not looking at anything specific or doing anything specific this evening. Just thought I'd have a live and see if people want to jump on and say hi. Whose batteries? So this battery is the one from my camper van. This is a Winston lithium iron phosphate battery. I'll just spin it around here quickly so you can see the other side. It's quite heavy. Yeah, so this is, I think Winston makes some of the best lithium iron phosphate batteries, cells on the market. In terms of the raw cells, they're just really high quality, and yeah, I really like them. I mean, like any of these sort of things, there's always going to be faults with some of the products, but consistently they are very high performing. So if you've been following some of our videos here on TikTok, we've this week I've been doing some tests on these cells. So I took the whole BMS off and I did individual cell tests, and these cells are rated at 200 amp hours, and I've been getting like 250 amp hours consistently from each of the cells, and they're all pretty close in terms of their performance. And then obviously when I put the battery back together and put the BMS on, I then did a capacity test with the BMS basically until the BMS cut everything off, and it did the same. I think it tested out at like 247 amp hours or something like that. And that's also considering that I have quite a high threshold in my BMS in terms of when it stops the battery from being discharged, just because I want to get the longest life that I can out of these cells. So we've spoken about it on previous videos, but the beauty with lithium iron phosphate is you don't have memory like you do with lead acid or gel. So you can, like with lead acid or gel, if you discharge it below 50%, that battery is pretty much toast. Like you could never use it again. I mean, you can, but the capacity of the battery once you've gone below that 50% threshold with lead acid or gel is way reduced. Whereas with lithium iron phosphate, you can pretty much use the full charge cycle of the battery. So you can go from 100% state of charge all the way down to 0% state of charge if you want to, and the battery has no memory, so you can then recharge it back to 100% state of charge, and it would work perfectly the same as it did before. Obviously if you go over those, so if you overcharge it, so if you charge it more than a total of 14.6 volts, or for each individual cell 3.65 volts, then you can damage it. And if you go below probably about 2.5 volts per cell, realistically you probably want to keep it at around 3 volts per cell, so 12 volts total. You get a really long life cycle out of the batteries, but the main reason why I don't go all the way to the threshold, so I stop charging my battery at 90% state of, do I stop charging? Yeah, so I charge it to 90% state of charge. That's when my BMS cuts the charge off, and then I stop discharging the battery at 15% state of charge. And that is kind of the threshold that I like to work with. So that gives me what's that, like 75 percent of the battery that I can use. I could probably push that if I wanted to, but I know that if I keep it within that threshold, then it'll give me a much longer life span of the batteries. So these batteries are rated at, I think, 4,000 to 5,000 cycles. So like, if you consider if I was to discharge them and recharge them completely every single day, that would last me, what's that, like well over 10 years, that would last me. And by using that sort of smaller threshold, or that window within the state of charge, I get a longer lifespan out of the battery cells. So yeah, so question, what are your opinion on pouch cells? So I've not really played much with pouch cells personally. Most of what I've done has all been around like vehicle-based off-grid power, so camper vans, RVs, boats, that sort of thing. And most of the time it's cases where you can carry reasonable weight, so pouch cells still need enclosure. Yeah, I think that's the case with most of these sort of batteries. Even these lithium iron phosphate prismatic cells, you need to clamp them and protect them anyway. 14 years, yeah, I think somebody did the maths for me on my battery there. 14 years is what I'll get out of them. So yeah, I mean, these are fairly high rated battery cells. Some of them, like these ones behind me here, I think these are rated at like 3,000 cycles. So that's one of the reasons why I like the Winstons, and you get you definitely get that life out of them. Yeah, so I see my dad's in the comments there. I thought I recognized that name. Yeah, so I think what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these, even these prismatic cells, a lot of them are made with pouches in them. I bet if I was to take these apart, I bet there's probably pouches and stuff in these. And so some of them have that anyway, depending on how they're made and how they're manufactured. So a lot of them, they put those pouches in cases anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing with these technologies, is that they last. There's so many variations of how they're made and all that sort of thing, and even like the Winstons, these ones, supposedly you can even charge them below freezing. So I think they're rated at like 5 degrees below freezing or somewhere thereabouts, which is quite impressive for lithium iron phosphate. That's probably the biggest drawback with lithium iron phosphate, is if you have them in an environment where where it's freezing a lot, then you have to be quite careful not to charge them when they're frozen. But these Winstons, I think you can charge just below freezing. I have the BMS set that I can't, so it'll cut off the charge if it gets too cold, but just because I don't want to take the risk of charging them. But yeah, I think you can, if you're in a pinch, you can charge them. But yeah, I mean, overall, I do like this setup in the sense of how functionally rich it is. I mean, the cells are very impressive. As I mentioned in the live over the weekend, the fact that it has M12 studs is really nice, because you can really torque these things and get a good contact. You're not that worried about stripping the threads. Obviously, you're not going overboard and just tightening it like to the point where it's stripping. But if you're stripping even in aluminium, if you're stripping an M12 hole, you're probably over tightening that. But yeah, I mean, you can tighten these nicely, which I really like. And this BMS, I mentioned it a little bit on the live over the weekend. It is super fiddly to put together. When I went through the process of actually building it for the first time, I was tearing my hair out, just because, like, yeah, I mean, it's really a step-by-step process of following the manual and going through all of that. I mean, it's quite fiddly, putting in all of these little wires that you can see on the top here. You have to put them in the right slots and clip them in and stuff like that. So it takes quite a lot of precision and care, especially in order not to short circuit some of these boards. So I had, when I first bought this BMS, one of the between boards was just completely faulty. There was just no life in it at all, and I don't believe that I damaged it in the process of assembling the battery, because when I looked at it underneath, there wasn't any sign of any shorts or anything like that. And then when I was assembling the battery for the first time, I actually shorted this board here, the end board, which goes on your positive outgoing terminal, and all that was from because you draw, so it uses these outlets on the sides here to manage the relay, and it does it all by the voltage that it sends to these different ports here where the cables are coming in. So if there's a current, if there's electricity there, so if it's 12 volts, then it knows to tell the relay to open or close, or whatever the case is. And I think in the side of the relay, you have the positive and the negative cable right next to each other, and I think I just touched them the wrong way around or something, just wasn't precise enough, and just saw smoke coming out of the top of the board here. And at that point I was like, yep, something is fried, it definitely shouldn't be smoking. When I took it off, you could clearly see, I could probably find it actually in my stuff over there, clearly see where it had shorted. And yeah, it was super frustrating. And one of the things with this, I mean, the advantage of this particular setup, especially for me being in the UK, is that all of this was sold by a company out of the Czech Republic. So it's not like I was waiting for like a month or more to get stuff out of China, replacements and stuff. And the company that manufactures the BMS, they're based in the Netherlands, I think. So it's even closer. And so those guys were super helpful. So the guys in the Czech Republic, I I don't like recommending them, because their support has been dismal. Whenever I've had problems, it hasn't been great. And I'm not a huge fan of them, but the guys that make this BMS, they're a very good company, and their support is excellent. So I got in contact with them just before Christmas actually, and I explained the situation and explained the challenges that I was facing and stuff like that. And the guy was like, oh, if you get it to us like before Christmas, within a few days, he'll fix it in a couple of hours, the board that I'd shorted, and he'll test the one that was faulty, and he said he'll get it then posted back out to me before the deadline. And part of it was that he was like, he's just trying to help me with Brexit and stuff, because he was going through the process of like their company was going through the process of trying to figure out how they were going to ship to the UK and stuff like that. And so he was just super helpful with that whole process, and I got it to him I think on the 23rd of December. He fixed it like that morning, got it posted out, and then I got it all in time for missing the duty fees and stuff that I would have had to pay with Brexit. So he was very helpful in that regard, so definitely recommend them. And he actually fixed the end board for me. So he just soldered in a wire, basically bypassing the bit that I'd shorted, so that board is fully functional now, which is quite nice to have a spare one of those knocking around, and then just replace the between board that was faulty. He just sent me a brand new one, and I think he actually removed my cable and soldered it on for me as well in the process. So yeah, they definitely recommend these guys, 123 Electric. I mean, their product is good. Like I said before, it's super fiddly, so I definitely wouldn't recommend it to somebody that's getting into the like DIY lithium iron phosphate battery world, just because it is, like, I've worked quite a lot with electrics, and I thought I was fairly careful with the whole process, but clearly not careful enough, still shorting the first cell and first board and stuff like that. So I definitely wouldn't recommend it to somebody that's a beginner, but it is very functionally rich and has a lot of functionality. Probably the biggest drawback with it though is the fact that the BMS relies on these relays here on the front that you can see, and these and what that's for. So you have two lines coming in here. So you got your charge and then your load, and so it can turn off your charge and your load independently. So if the battery is being overcharged, or it's getting to the point where it is going to be overcharged, it can just turn that relay off, stop the charge coming in, but still let the load go out and things like that. So that's where it is pretty good. But probably the single biggest drawback with it is that these relays are only rated at 100 amp. So it is limiting. So if you are in the situation where you want to be able to run like a coffee machine or a microwave or something like that, or an induction stove in your camper van or RV or something, the chances are likely that you couldn't use this BMS, just because 100 amps is not that much when you start putting like a 2 kilowatt inverter into your van or something like that. So I actually have a 2 kilowatt inverter in my van, but I never use that full capacity just because I pretty much don't run anything that needs mains electricity. All of our charging is done on USB, so tablets and phones are all charged with USB. Obviously all the lights run on 12 volt. Our heating system is gas, just LPG, and that uses 12 volt to ignite and stuff like that, and has some fans and things which are all 12 volt. And then our stove is all gas. Fridge is gas or mains electric, but mostly runs on gas. So we use very little mains actually. I don't run a coffee machine, so all of my coffee and stuff like that I do is all sort of hand pour over type stuff in the camper van. So don't really have the need to run a really high capacity inverter, but I just have it in there because when I was putting in the new electrical system, I decided I didn't want to be messing around with putting in an inverter in the future if I wanted to be able to run something big in there. And so I just went for it, especially that inverters are relatively inexpensive these days, so it made sense just to wire it all in while I was at it. So that, going back to it, that's probably the biggest drawback of this system is these relays. I really wish that they had put like 200 amp relays, especially that you can get them. I mean, relays are pretty inexpensive, and there are some big relays, or even better, using something like a MOSFET or something like that didn't draw power just to stay open and stuff like that. So but it is quite nice because it has these Hall effect sensors here, so one for each of your lines, so it will measure your charge and your load, which is quite handy to just see how many amps you're charging at and things like that. So yeah, I do like the system, but the other probably even bigger drawback other than the relay is actually the cost. It's an expensive system. I think they charge, by the time you got the relay system and the BMS, I think it comes out at like somewhere like $400 or somewhere around there. So when you consider that you can buy a like DALI BMS or something like that for $150, $200, and that's like a 200 amp relay, this is quite an expensive system. But I got it just to try out, just to see what was available and stuff like that. So yeah, I do quite like it. Anybody got any questions on off-grid power, vans, anything like that you want to ask? Yeah, so I've just been charging this one up, just top balancing it. I've got just cables connected in there that have it connected in parallel, so I've just been top balancing that. I've just finished doing a test on that battery, and it's one of those batteries that doesn't quite meet the stated capacity by the manufacturer, so it was a bit disappointing, but it's still very good value for money. So these particular cells, I think they're like $125 each or somewhere around there. Well, actually even less. It was $92 per cell that we paid, and then I think like $100 ish of shipping. So you're talking about $450 odd to get these cells to us. And then a BMS, we're going to put a DALI BMS on these, and that's going to run us probably $150. So you're talking about having $600 for a 285 amp hour battery. So your value for money on one of these lithium iron phosphate batteries is very, very good still, even though it doesn't quite meet the stated capacity by the manufacturer. So the manufacturer put 300 amp hours on the branding, so there's this big sticker on the top saying 300 amp hours, but they only test out at 285 amp hours, so still not that bad. But when you consider the like watt hours per dollar, when you do that calculation, it's still a very good value for money. I mean, when you think that to get the same performance out of like a Battleborn or something like that, Battleborn system, you'd probably need to spend $3,000 on Battleborns to get the same capacity or slightly more than this. And with Battleborn, obviously you don't have Bluetooth and that sort of thing. So this is a very good value for money. Good inverter brand. So I would recommend Gyandal if I was. That's what I put in my camper van. So I'm not sure where they're made. Probably. I don't know where they come from. I mean, they're probably made in China, but they're a very good brand. That's what I've used a lot of. My dad has one of those as well. We've done a lot of testing with it. They're very reliable. So I put a 2,000 watts, a 2 kilowatt inverter in my camper van, and it's been very reliable. I haven't pushed it that much to its full capability, but I definitely recommend those Gyandal. You can get them on Amazon. So I bought mine on Amazon here in the UK, and I know you can get them on Amazon in the US very easily. They're quite popular over there as well. How do you find good battery deals? So one of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of months is to try and help people to find good manufacturers and or resellers. So there's not many like big battery manufacturers in China. There's a handful of actual manufacturers, so the people that actually make the batteries. And generally speaking, what you do is kind of these manufacturers will make a whole range of different cells. So they'll make like everything from 85 amp hour cells all the way through to like 300. You even get some Winston cells that are 400 amp hours, and I think possibly even more. So then what happens is, like with a lot of manufacturing industries, they'll then give shipments of those cells to resellers. So generally speaking, we're not talking directly to the manufacturers. We're talking to a big reseller who has hundreds of thousands of cells in a warehouse, and then they are negotiating prices and things like that, and often those guys will get kind of defective cells, or they'll get cells that haven't been fully tested or are a bit hit and miss and stuff like that. So in this case, these guys probably got these. They were probably rated at 300 amp hours from the manufacturer, and the resellers probably just chancing their luck to sell them at 300 amp hours to get a bit more money than if they actually sold them at what they are, which is probably a 285 amp hour battery. But yeah, honestly, it's hit and miss. So what we've been doing over the last couple of months is trying a bunch of different manufacturers. So I think we're on to I think we've had 3 shipments come in so far, and I think we've got another 3 coming. And most of them, these we had 2 batches from the same guys, and then we've got the next few are different manufacturers that we're just going to try out, and then we're going to write reviews and give some info also on our YouTube channel as well. So we're going to be doing longer form reviews on our YouTube channel. I think we'll actually release the first one this week. So if you're interested in that, then go and check out our YouTube. You'll find the link in our bio here on TikTok. But yeah, we're going to do some reviews and then kind of release some information about the manufacturers that we like, based on the experience of the reseller that we've been able to find and all that sort of stuff, and also just how the batteries perform. So yeah, it is a bit hit and miss, and that's it is difficult to find decent manufacturers unless you get something like Winston, which is really known for being good. These are more like no-name brand or really small like names that nobody knows really. So that when you start getting to that level, then you do take some risk in buying those, because they could be duds like these ones. And again, like I said earlier, these are still good value for money compared to if you were to buy like a Battleborn or something, but you just don't get what's on the package really. So it says 300 amp hours, but it's not. It's actually a 285 amp hour. So yeah, we're gonna have some reviews on our website and on YouTube as well. But in terms of how we actually find the manufacturers, we're just going on Alibaba and just trawling through listings, sellers, things like that to find good battery sellers. So even that's hit and miss because you can't always take their reviews on Alibaba as gospel, because it's not always going to be good transactions and information that you can rely on. So a lot of it you just have to take a chance really. What are we on here? Any other questions? So I'm going to be putting this battery back in my camper tomorrow. I'll probably make a video about it. It's one thing about these Winston cells is that they are quite cumbersome to lift into a situation. So like where I have my battery situated in my camper, it's quite a difficult place to get to, just in terms of it's just super awkward. You're like crouched over. So dropping this into place is a bit of a mission, but I should get it done tomorrow. And then we're hoping to get out in the camper in the next couple of weeks. Now that things are, lockdown is lifting a little bit here in Ireland. So we're going to get out and go and do some camper vanning on the coast or something like that. Alright. Yeah, I think we're going to end the live there. I've quite enjoyed this one, more interactive than usual in terms of previously what I've done is just like building a battery or something like that, which I guess can be interesting, but it's probably better to do that in a more structured way and actually make a video about it. Have some good camping. Thank you. Yeah, we love the north coast of Northern Ireland. I'll make some TikToks about it when we do it, because I hadn't started this TikTok account when we previously went before the latest lockdown. So yeah, I'll definitely enjoy it. It's one of our favorite places to go is the Causeway Coast in Northern Ireland. It's such a beautiful spot. I think it's one of my favorite places on earth. Just awesome views, and yeah, I love it up there. So I think that's probably where we'll end up going the first time we go out. So we'll definitely enjoy it, and we'll make some videos as well and share what it looks like for you guys. You can get your wanderlust going to come visit Northern Ireland. Alright guys, we're going to end it there. Thanks for joining, and thanks for your comments and interacting here. I've enjoyed this. It's been great. Next time I think we'll get a live going with my dad and get like a double up, because he's got some interesting stuff to talk about. He's way more technical in the battery department than I am. So yeah, he's definitely got lots of knowledge to share. But yeah, we'll see you guys